Okay, let's open project number 7 here, which is called Channels, and this is going to allow us to view the last 2 new filters we have in After Effects 6. So go ahead and open that, and we'll see a graphic here that we started with when we did our 3D glasses comp. We have the car on top of the background. This time it's not animated, but I want you to do a preview and just have a look at the title that we have up there. The word Fire Speed has this really nice moving flame background behind it. And believe it or not, this has all been animated inside After Effects all on one layer. Okay, now it's using a new channel filter called Calculations, which is brand new to After Effects, not new to Photoshop. So again, Photoshop users should recognize that. The Calculations filter allows us to combine different channels from different layers and use them to do things like masking and compositing, but all on one layer. Well, we're going to do the same thing that we have here with the title to the car, so you can see exactly how that channel filter helps us out. So I'm going to click to stop my preview and then come down here to the timeline and select layer number 2, which again is the car, just like we had before. And come up to the effects palette and let's apply the first filter that I'm going to use to turn the background of this car into this flame. And that's going to be one called Minimax, okay? Again, it's one of the channel filters that's going to allow us to just thicken up the layer itself. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. Bring up the effect controls for that here. We can just apply a couple of very quick settings to it. So I'm going to set it to maximum. And we're going to affect color and alpha, so the alpha channel will grow as well. And then I can just drag up the radius and thicken that out to whatever value I need it to be. So we're going to build on this, and we can see the effect as we go along. So I'm going to set an initial radius of 30 for this. Okay, so all we've done is thicken that up. Let's go and apply a second layer now. I'm going to apply fast blur. I would normally use a Gaussian blur, but let's keep it super quick and easy. So let's apply a fast blur to this. And I'll set an initial value here of maybe 50 pixels, somewhere around 40 to 50. So you can see we've nicely blurred out that area. Now the reason we're doing this is we're going to use the turbulent displace filter in a short while to just pull these edges around. And the more area we give it, that will expand just like we've done here around Fire Speed and give us more area to work with. Now before I apply the turbulent displace, I'm going to apply a color filter to this. So we'll use fill for that, so we can fill all the pixels we currently have. So again, let's just choose that, drag it on in. And by default, it'll do red. I'm happy with that. That'll do actually as a good background for the flames that we're going to put on in just a second. Now, the next one will be one that we've already used inside this whole set of lessons called Turbulent Displace. You should be familiar with that one. So let's bring that one up and again, drag it in. You see, we're just adding all these effects one on top of the other to achieve a very interesting effect around the outside of our layer. Now, let's go and choose some different settings in here. Let's drag that off to the side so we can see it as we go along. I'm going to change the amount here from 50, which isn't too much. I'm going to push that up a long way. Let's try and get some good displacement. Maybe 130 or 140 will do. So you see the shape is now distorting based around a certain amount of noise. But obviously the noise, again, is based on size, and 100 is very large and not very easy to see the distortion. So let's pull that down small. Let's go for a sort of 10 or 15. And you can see as I do that, we get these lovely edges that come in around the outside, which already look like fire if we see it in motion. So that's looking pretty interesting. I'm also going to change the complexity. It's set to 1. If I push that up to maybe 2 or 3, we'll actually harden up those edges. See if I go quite a long way up there. Those edges almost look like smoke now. Okay, a little bit too much. Let's push that down to about 3. Okay, again, it's very, very soft edge. Looks just like a fire edge. And then what we need to do is obviously animate the offset turbulence, because that's what's going to make this pattern move. If I drag that to the right, you'll see obviously the turbulence moves through that background and will make it look like flame. Now we want it to animate to the left, so we're going to animate a negative value. So let me just undo that. Let's check we're at 0 seconds along the timeline and go ahead and turn on a keyframe for offset turbulence. And then I'll hit the O key to take me to the out point of my layer, which is actually just under 5 seconds across. And I'll change the offset value here to about minus 2000. That should give me a good enough offset. And we can always do a quick preview of that and check just how it's looking. Now, an interesting thing at this point, obviously, is the way that the shape is distorting, not only based on the filters that we've applied, but also the layer itself. The original car layer is an alpha channel layer that is rotating around, so the pixel size of the layer changes on a frame-by-frame basis. And these filters are obviously added on top of that, and what we have to start with is a real nice flame effect. It doesn't have any pixels in it as yet in terms of fire, but we can see the effect is taking shape because it's moving with the original shape of the car. Well, what we're going to do now is use the brand new calculations filter to put flame inside of this. So let's click and stop that. I'm going to close that option down. Let's come back across to our effects palette. Let's just highlight the option there, and let's just type in calculations or calc, and that will come up with the only option. Again, a brand new filter inside of After Effects 6. Let's double click to apply this to my layer, and let's see what options we can adjust. Now initially the input, I'm not really going to adjust that. We are going to be affecting the RGB values and the alpha channel as well, so I'll leave that as it is. The important thing about calculations is what we call here the second source. So the calculations filter allows us to take any other layer inside our composition and extract a specific channel from that and combine it with the one that we currently have selected. In this case, the outline of the car plus all the effects that we've applied. So at the moment, by default, it selects the current layer itself as the second layer. Well, if you look here, we have at the bottom a fire movie. This is a movie that's stacked beneath every other layer in the timeline so we can't see it, but it's an Artbeats clip of a wall of fire that we've got selected. So if I choose that, it will now take the RGB alpha values from that. Initially, we can't see them because the second layer opacity is set to 0. So if you go ahead and click and drag on that and pull that up to 100%, you see magically we introduce the whole fire movie, which isn't even in this composition effectively. It's in the background and hidden. We've taken all the RGB information and used the calculations filter to pull that on top of the pixels that we currently have. So if we just hit 0 now and do a preview of that, you can see now effectively a ball of fire that's rotating around. Its edges are distorted and rippling, and this is all based on the filters that we've currently got applied to the layer. And don't forget, this was a car to start with. This is all happening on one layer. Now, there's no rule to say that we can't use the calculations filter more than once, and that's what we need to do in order to get the original car back onto this layer, because I want it all to be on one layer so it's easy for me to adjust or move around the screen. I don't want to do this on multiple layers. So you can see the effect we've got so far. It's looking pretty good. One thing I might want to do at this point is just slightly adjust the contrast in the flame, so we can easily do that by applying levels. So I'm going to close up calculations there, come back across to my effects, and let's just type in LEVE. That should bring up my levels filters, and I'll use individual controls. Double click to apply that. And all I'll do in this is very simply adjust the white point and the black point. Let's just push the white up so we get a bit more contrast in the yellow parts of the flame. Then let's take the dark end and pull the reds down so we get a bit more of an orange, a lot darker. That will stand out well around the side of our car because the car is very yellow. The flame would blend in with it a little too much. Okay, now we've got the levels set there, we can use the calculations again for one final thing. So what we could do quite simply is take the calculations here and just duplicate them. So hit Command D to duplicate and drag it down below the levels so it's rendered after it in the render pipeline. Okay, so the levels apply first. And then we can go through here and choose the settings again that we need. So let's go to the second source. We can see that everything is set to what we had before. Well, obviously this is a good point to go ahead and click the reset button. It sets everything back to where we were. And we can see here that obviously we get the yellow rendered movie. That's the layer that we're currently searching for. We want to take the information of the original car and pull it back in. Well, that information is there for the taking. Let's just take the opacity of this layer and drag it all the way up to 100%. And we'll see the car appears on top of its own layer. Now, we also have a couple of options here that are important. Preserve transparency. If we have that set, if the flames weren't as big as they are now and they actually cut in, the transparency of them would affect the transparency of the car. So it's up to you whether you turn preserve transparency on or off. And you might notice a couple of things very much on the edge of the back end of the car there. If I do turn this on and off, there's a slight fade, but you might notice it or not depending on the size of the footage. But we also have stretch second layer to fit, and this will stretch it to fit the pixels that are currently visible, so the overall width of the new flame that's in the background. Again, if you want it or not, that's up to you. I'm going to turn that off so the car comes in at its original size and it's not distorted to fit. So if we do a quick RAM preview of that now, you can see everything that has happened. We have created this wonderful ball of fire effect around the outside of our car, and this is all on one layer. It's very important to bear in mind. It's all done on one layer in our composition, very cleverly using the calculations filter to apply multiple changes, one on top of the other, bring the flame in, and then bring the car back in on itself. And you could obviously store this effect as a favorite and use it to just apply again to a title or to another graphic later down the line. But you can see that the calculations filter is just as powerful here in After Effects as it is in Photoshop. Okay, there's one more channel filter that we can use inside After Effects just to enhance this a little bit more. So again, let's click and just stop the preview. I'm going to come across here to my effects palette, and let's just type in Chan again because it's another channel filter. And this one is called Channel Combiner, another brand new one in After Effects 6. So I'm going to double click and that will apply it again on top of what we've got, so everything all of a sudden changes color. Let's come up here and close the calculations because we're now set to this new channel combiner filter, and it has some very simple options. If we go to the source here, again we have an option to use a second layer. At this point it's not. What it's doing is it's taking the RGB colors that we have visible in all of these layers combined together in one and converting them to hue, lightness and saturation values, which is why we're getting the color changes that we are. Now obviously we have different options here to go from hue, lightness, saturation to RGB. We can go out to YUV and back, or we can just view individual channels such as the red and apply just the red on top. But you see, once you choose one of these, it gives us a 2 option. Previous ones that we had just simply use these 2 things, say one to the other. If we come down here and pick a specific channel, we can then choose the channel within the image that it applies to. So at the moment it's taking everything that's in the red channel, converting it to a grayscale value, and dropping that into the lightness channel, which gives us this new effect in the background. So again, there's multiple things you can do here to play around with the values. Just try various different settings. What's very interesting is if you take the values between the channels and move them into the other color channels, you can actually change the color of the car in certain ways. So let's say we take the information from the blue channel and drop that into the red channel, we'll actually end up with a green car. Now you'll see the wheels stay the same because they're very neutral in terms of gray, so that doesn't get affected much. We could also say let's go from the green and go across to the blue channel, and we get ourselves a white car. So there's all these different things you can do. But the reason I want to show it to you is this option again here called Use Second Layer. We can use this now to pull in the original fire and apply it to the color of the body so it will look like the flame itself is reflected inside the yellow body of the car. Very quick and easy. So let's go ahead and turn on Use Second Layer, and once again go through and choose the fire movie, and that will apply over the top of the original. And all we're going to do is take the hue from the fire movie and apply it to the hue of the car movie. And you'll see now that obviously it doesn't affect the flame in the background because we're just applying the same image on top of itself, but you can see on the body of the car there is a mixture of color here which looks like the metal is actually reflecting the outside fire that we see. A final round preview will give us the finished effect there. And don't forget, the good thing about all of this is everything has been done on one single layer. This can be saved out as a favorite, used at any time in the future, but you can see here that the channel filters, something you're used to from Photoshop, now have a whole new meaning inside After Effects 6.